Hey, this is Cam with Blacktail Studio, and this week I'm going to show you what I do with my scraps. These were two maple burl scraps I had after making a table that weren't really good for anything else, so I turned them into these little coasters here. And a lot of people do wood coasters. I haven't seen many like this, not at all saying that I invented it, but I'm going to show you the process here in just a couple minutes. I started over at the Bandsaw, and this is my Laguna 14BX, and you want to make sure the entire piece clears. I've done this where you get the cut started and then the very peak of it doesn't quite clear. And here's another good tip is I found 8 millimeters to be the perfect cut point. That makes it thick enough after it's all sanded that you still have a coaster that's not going to break on you. So 8 millimeters is a good place to be. And while I'm looking at it, I have a 3/4 inch carbide resawking blade that most people tend to put a little bit thinner blades than this on their bandsaws, and I used to as well. I find most of my cuts I make with my bandsaw are straight or pretty straight anyway. I have another 3/8 inch blade that I haven't put on in about 6 months. So I really like the 3/4 inch because it gets you a really clean cut for tall resaws like this. Realistically, to make coasters like this, you do need a bandsaw, but I wouldn't say you need a drum sander. It does help to get them a perfectly uniform thickness, so that's why I ran them through the drum sander there. Get everything just the right thickness, get those saw marks out. Don't make the mistake that I've made too many times when I first made these coasters and wait to start sanding them till you get them to the final size. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sand everything to 180 grit while they're in as big a piece as possible. That's going to save me from having to hold tiny little coasters in my hand and sand one at a time. And if you're curious what this funny looking device is, it's a Festool vacuum clamp. It's pretty handy. It's definitely not necessary for something like this. What I used to use is just a rubber pad set on my workbench that I sand on, and that kind of keeps the vibrations down. So I'd really just recommend using a rubber pad for this type of work, but the vacuum clamp is obviously pretty nice. I played around with this different sizes of coasters over the years I made, and I found that 4 inches is a good standard coaster if you want to make kind of an XL one, maybe for beer steins, 4.5 inches. But with a live edge, you're obviously going to have some fluctuation there. So I tried to get everything to about 4 inches wide by roughly 4 inches with the live edge. And about half the coasters I did in this batch were perfectly square and the other half were with a live edge. Here's some of the square ones. And for no particular reason, I did just a chamfer bit here. It's a 45-degree bit, and it just made the edge a little more interesting than rounding it over. For the ones with the live edge, I just went with my regular 1/8 inch roundover bit, which is kind of my default alternative to just hand sanding over a corner. The 1/8 inch gives you a nice uniform rounded over look that just looks more finished than doing it by hand. So here's a shot of the 1/8 inch roundover. Again, just a nice look. Here's the Porter Cable Restorer, which does a nice job of taking any bark, loose stuff, dirt off without scarring the wood itself. Moving on to the finish process, I've used a lot of different finishes for these coasters, and this time I'm going to go with an Armor Seal. It's a urethane type finish, and it's a wipe-on finish, but it's not quite as easy as like an Osmo or a Odie's oil. And it does take a few coats, but since these were had a lot of softer wood in there, this is spalted maple, and the spalted parts can be really soft. This does a nice job of penetrating and giving a really hard, durable finish that'll be nice for these coasters. While you're watching my hyper finish here, I'll explain the process. I go the first coat pretty heavy. You could even brush it on if you wanted. I prefer to wipe it on, come back, sand it, then apply a second coat, and then if necessary, third or fourth. These sanding sponges work really well because they don't really scar the material. They just take off the dust nibs and the little imperfections in there. So I go through the whole thing, sand it with these sanding sponges. You don't have to use this exact type. Any of the ones at Home Depot are fine. 220, 320 grit. I think this was even a 400 to 500 rated sanding sponge, but get everything nice and flat and then apply the second coat. Oh, and after you blow them off with some compressed air, these microfiber towels are the best thing for getting all the last little bits of dust off of there. And then just like the first coat, add the second coat. And this coat you can go a little bit lighter on, kind of wipe off any excess, and it'll make it a little bit more uniform. You can see here, this is that spalted wood and how it's absorbing differently. So this will take a few more coats, especially one like this. So this piece was really nice, probably good after 2 coats. I think I put 3 on anyway, but the other ones may take a few more. And I'll spare you having to watch me add the 3rd, 4th, and 5th coats on there. As I mentioned here, the more solid pieces took 3 coats. The softest took 5 coats, like this one. I liked it with the crack. You may not be into it with the crack. Here's all the different styles. These all came from just those 2 pieces of wood. And since I'm always looking to streamline my business, I'd be curious to know which ones of these are your favorite and maybe which ones I shouldn't bother making. Because the cool thing with wood is everything is so different, but the frustrating thing with wood is everything's so different. Like this kind of punky, soft, spalted maple. This one with some crazy colors. I like that one quite a bit. Here's a book matched of the more solid ones. These are really pretty. And then these square ones, which aren't quite as exciting, but still neat in their own way. I'm hoping some of you out there are watching this because you're looking for ideas on things to use your scrap wood for. So I found these have sold really well around Christmas and Mother's Day. So they don't really cost anything other than your time, which obviously isn't free. But if you have some downtime and you're looking for something to expand your catalog, I think these can be a nice addition. And with 60 coasters made, it'll be about $600, which isn't bad for zero cost of materials, just a little bit of time. Okay, that's the whole video. I appreciate you tuning in, and don't forget to comment with which ones you liked best and which ones you liked least. It'll help me with my next batch. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more like it. Thanks a lot.